Not only had it been a terrible day, but it had also been one of those relentless weeks where everything that could possibly go wrong did. Years of building a reputation as a diligent and conscientious employee had been shattered in a single humiliating moment. My manager, in front of my colleagues, had chosen to reprimand me over a trivial misunderstanding, his frustration landing squarely on my shoulders. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply stood there, jaw tight, teeth gritted, enduring every sharp word he hurled my way. By the time I pulled into my driveway, all I craved was the solace of a hot shower and the quiet embrace of solitude. Anything to ease the relentless pounding in my skull. But as I approached, my stomach clenched at the sight of Tracy's car parked in my usual spot. My patience, already hanging by a thread, finally snapped. I considered honking, a futile attempt at venting my frustration, but what was the point? Of course, my sister-in-law would stop by unannounced, parking as if she owned the place. Too exhausted for yet another meaningless confrontation, I resigned myself to the inconvenience, parking on the street instead. The crunch of gravel beneath my tires did little to soothe my agitation. The house was dimly lit, the faint murmur of voices drifting from the kitchen. I took a deep breath and moved toward the sound, expecting Melissa's familiar greeting. A simple, tired, "Hey, how was your day?" Instead, the words that reached me stopped me cold. Melissa's voice was clear, unwavering. "I simply don't love him anymore." Tracy let out a quiet laugh. "You knew this was coming. You were never over Liam," she said, her tone almost amused. "You just settled for Jordan because he was stable. Financially, at least." The distant clinking of wine glasses was barely audible over the pounding in my ears. Every instinct told me to step forward, to make my presence known, but something deeper urged me to remain still, to listen. "I've gotten back in touch with someone," Melissa admitted, excitement lacing her words. "And now I see what I was missing. He's exciting, Tracy. He makes me feel alive." Tracy chuckled. "So, what's the divorce plan?" I held my breath, my knuckles whitening as I gripped the doorway. Melissa didn't hesitate. "I want out." My stomach twisted violently. "I'll take what's mine," she continued, her voice firm. "And what's his?" Did that mean? "The courts always favor the woman in cases like this," she mused casually. "Jordan has worked hard, sure. But legally, half of everything belongs to me. And he doesn't even have a prenup." Tracy whistled softly. "Damn. That's cold." Melissa laughed, unbothered. "Don't worry. Liam is successful. But why should I walk away empty-handed? After all this time, I earned this." I was methodical. I was patient. The late nights she spent glued to her phone. The way she brushed me off when I reached for her. The growing distance between us that I had foolishly attributed to stress or boredom. It all made sense now. She had never loved me. I wasn't her partner. I was a stepping stone. A means to an end. A safety net. A strange calm settled over me. I wouldn't storm in and confront her like some heartbroken fool. That would only make me a victim, a pathetic man pleading for an explanation I already had. No, I would beat her at her own game. Without a sound, I turned and walked away, leaving nothing behind but the first step in a plan that would ensure she got exactly what she deserved. For hours, I drove aimlessly, her words echoing in my mind like a cursed mantra. I settled for Jordan because he was stable. I'll take what's mine. She had already made her decision, and if she was willing to play dirty, then I had to move first. I pulled into a deserted lot, resting my forehead against the steering wheel. 3 years of marriage, built on deception. 3 years of me working tirelessly to build a future, believing we were a team. In reality, I was nothing more than a financial crutch, and now she planned to destroy my life and walk away with half of everything I had worked for. Melissa had contributed little to our life together. After we married, she insisted on focusing on the house and starting a business, but that business never came. Instead, she spent her days shopping, lunching with her sister, scrolling through social media, searching for new ways to complain about a life she did nothing to build. And yet, the law entitled her to half of my hard-earned wealth. The thought made me sick. Even after inheriting $25 million from my late father, I had been careful. I lived modestly, never flaunting my wealth. And if Melissa ever discovered the truth about my real worth, she would fight tooth and nail to take it. Unless I acted first. Straightening in my seat, my mind suddenly clear, I knew what I had to do. I needed to disappear. I couldn't just withdraw everything overnight. That would raise too many red flags. No, I had to be methodical. Silent. That night, I checked into a modest hotel under a false name, paying in cash. Sitting at the small desk in my dimly lit room, I powered up my laptop and started moving my investments. I didn't sell everything at once. That would be too obvious. Instead, I staggered the transfers, funneling assets into different accounts, some under my name, others under the shell companies I had quietly established years ago. I emptied our joint account, leaving just enough for appearances. Just enough so Melissa wouldn't suspect anything. Yet, step 2, vanish without a trace. Melissa would notice my absence soon enough, and when she did, if she grew suspicious, she'd report me. I needed a plausible excuse, something to keep the police from getting involved. The next morning, I would set my final plan into motion. This wasn't just about protecting what was mine. It was about ensuring Melissa got exactly what she deserved. I sent a casual message to my assistant. Hey, I have to take a last-minute business trip. Investors need me out of town for a while. She asked if I needed a flight booked. No, I've got it covered. If anyone asked, they would assume I was just traveling. Step 3, cut all ties. I left my phone behind, paid cash for a burner, canceled my credit cards, and deleted my social media accounts. Then, I sent an anonymous email to the police stating that I was leaving of my own free will. If Melissa tried to play the abandoned wife card, they wouldn't entertain it. By the time she woke up, the realization would hit. No money, no access to my funds, and no idea where I was. Worst of all, Liam. Melissa had bet everything on him, convinced she could leave me and step seamlessly into a perfect life with her exciting new man. But Liam wouldn't save her. The moment he realized she was broke, he would disappear faster than I did. As I crossed the state line, feeling lighter with every mile, I knew one thing for certain. I was free. For the first time in years, I had no obligations, no betrayals hanging over my shoulders. Just me, my freedom, and a world of possibilities. She rolled her eyes in surprise and grinned back. Just don't get in my way. For the first time since we met, I understood how much I liked this woman. Before turning and leaving, I felt an unsettling feeling creeping in, lingering until the morning. Even though Charlotte continued to treat me like a stray, I had grown accustomed to life at Silver Creek Ranch. A dog that may strike at any time, but something didn't feel right today. It wasn't just the horse's restlessness or the cattle's unease. There was something more profound, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Frank and Margaret were in town for supplies, leaving Charlotte, Caleb, and me in charge. I had completed my morning tasks, yet I found myself hanging around the stables, gazing out over the horizon as if I were waiting for something to happen. Then I saw the fence line. From where I stood, I could see a portion of the distant pasture fence. It wasn't broken, but the wires looked loose. My scowl deepened as I picked up my hat and made my way to where Charlotte and Caleb were repairing a water line. Caleb had gone to check on a sick colt, so I headed toward the fence alone. As I got closer, an eerie sense of certainty settled over me. This wasn't a coincidence. Hearing the distinct murmur of voices, I slowed my pace, moving stealthily toward the tree line. 2 men crouched near the fence, rapidly expanding the gap. My heartbeat quickened. Rustlers. I had heard Frank talk about cattle theft before, but I never imagined I would witness it firsthand. And now, these men were cutting their way into Silver Creek Ranch, right in front of me. One of them looked familiar, Tyler. He worked for Howard Calloway, the owner of a rival ranch, and I had seen him at a rodeo event in town weeks prior. He had a reputation for shady dealings. I should have reached for my phone and called Caleb or the sheriff, but a sudden movement near the water caught my eye. My stomach twisted as I recognized Charlotte. She had taken the narrow path, carrying her veterinary gear, likely checking on an injured animal. She had no idea that Tyler and his accomplice were just a few yards away, hidden in the brush. I didn't have time to think. My boots struck the ground loudly enough for them to hear. Both men whipped around. Tyler's brows lifted in surprise when he saw me. "You must be the new ranch hand, Jordan," he said, standing up. His friend chuckled. "You're trespassing," I replied, my voice steady. "So what are you going to do? Stop us?" Tyler grinned. "I don't think you want to find out." "I believe I do," I shot back. Before he could react, I lunged. I wasn't a warrior or a cowboy, but I had played football in high school. I knew how to tackle, and I gave it everything I had. Tyler stumbled back as his friend lunged at me. I sidestepped his blow and landed a punch squarely on his jaw. The altercation didn't last long. Caleb arrived, shotgun in hand, more than enough to make them freeze. "Drop it," he growled. Tyler's friend hesitated until Caleb cocked the gun. The knife clattered to the ground. Charlotte emerged from the brush, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. I stood there, breathless, Tyler's blood smeared across my knuckles. Within 30 minutes, the sheriff arrived, and both men were taken into custody. They had stolen from several ranches. Silver Creek was just their latest target. The man behind it all, Howard Calloway, was arrested soon after. Frank and Margaret returned just in time to hear the story. Frank clapped me on the back. Seems like you're more than just a city boy after all. But the most unexpected reaction came from Charlotte. She didn't say much at first, but that evening, after supper, she found me at the barn. You could have gotten yourself killed, she said softly. I met her gaze. So could you. She shook her head. You're a fool. But there was something different in her voice, something softer. Something like respect. After that night, everything changed. Before, Charlotte had been distant, distrustful, constantly waiting for me to mess up. But after the rustlers, something shifted. She still tested me, still challenged me, but now there was something else. Curiosity. She noticed me. And damn it, I noticed her too. It started subtly. The way she was always nearby, even when she didn't need to be. The way her gaze lingered a little longer when I spoke. The way she brushed past me in the barn, close enough for me to feel her warmth. One afternoon, as I was repairing a broken gate near the stables, I sensed her watching me. You're always this quiet around me? She asked, leaning against the fence. I wiped the sweat from my brow. Depends on who I'm around. She smirked. I shrugged. You talk enough for both of us. She chuckled, shaking her head, but there was something in her eyes, a glimmer of laughter, of something new, something unspoken.